I'm going to get that other link.
The YouTube you're saying?
How come there is no video?
Okay, it looks like you're live.
But I don't see the video.
Because you're live now. You don't have to wait.
There it is. Now we see it.
Great. So, start.
So our now it's kind of confusing. I will start. Okay, so these are the virtual office hours. The first set didn't work, so I'm gonna post on the other Hangout the new link. I wonder if we can do that.
On the
previous Hangout.
Oh, on the previous Hangout. Sure.
All right, so I'm here with Morris Greenberg, the fabulous, fabulous course coordinator for the course, Sabermetrics 101. I wanted to go back to this book. I always like to start out with books. This is Curveball by Bennett and Albert. And remember, Jim Albert is the wonderful editor for the Journal for Quantitative Analysis in Sport. I described this book earlier as a book about teaching sabermetrics. That's Jim's other book. I got confused. This book is actually a great Sabermetrics 101 text. And it's right up there with Baseball Between the Numbers as a great explanation about sabermetrics, right up there with Ben Baumer's book as a introduction to sabermetrics. So Curveball, 2004, I think, 2001 and 2003, I'm sorry, is a great book. And one of the reasons I was reminded about how great it was is looking over linear weights again, looking over Pete Palmer's work. They have a great discussion of George Lindsay, who we're going to talk about in Module 6, and the work of Pete Palmer looking at linear weights. Now, linear weights was some of the there were questions on the forums about linear weights. And remember, F.C. Lane has this other technique in the 1916 paper he wrote looking at runs, and now he analyzes how runs are scored and realizes batting average is not the right description of how runs are scored. So he gets in there and says, well, a single is worth a quarter of a run, double half a run, because that runner goes along those bases and gets that much credit towards a run just for the single. Then he adds on top of that the advancing runners piece, how runners advance based on a single or any other hit, and adds another component to it. And he gets amazingly close to linear weights. Now, linear weights is looking at all the plays and the situations where a single makes a difference towards a run. So it's a regression of runs to singles, doubles, triples, homers, and it really is a different way to get linear weights. Now, the other third way is the value-added approach by saying a single in a situation will do this to runs. So all of them get very close to run values for hitting events, as opposed to a measure like batting average or on-base percentage or slugging percentage. Those measures do other things, but they don't try to estimate runs. And that's where these other runs estimators come in. So we haven't done a full exploration of how run estimators work and the best elements of run estimators. But the best elements of run estimators still go to these situational run estimators that really, I mean, Bill James describes it a certain way and leads us to the ideas, but base runs by David Smith and other alternatives around that really get at situational dynamic runs estimators that look at situations better than, say, these average run estimators like linear weights. So linear weights is an average. Other run estimators are big regressions to try to maximize, R squared and minimize the error associated with that formula to get it runs. But so that's what linear weights is. And unfortunately, in the introductory course, we really didn't thoroughly talk about base runs and how they're really different, because we had to describe linear weights. So that's just a roundabout way of saying runs estimators are actually complicated. There's a lot going on there. They all do a pretty good job when you get down to it, but there's better runs estimators because they're based on actually how the game works. So David Smith's work, Base Runs, thinks about how runs are actually scored, like F.C. Lane did a century ago. How are runs scored? And he did his best estimate of what data he had. With better data, play-by-play data, we have better runs estimators today. And again, a lot of them work well. Just like OPS is a great tool to get at offensive performance, it's not the best measure. Now we're here in my hot, steamy office, so I'm going to be a little sweaty. I'm a little sweaty and worked up because the U.S. men's national team just lost to Belgium, and I've got nothing against Belgium, but now I kind of have a thing against Belgium. Now I won't root for them anymore. I'm like, oh, go Argentina, beat Belgium. I don't know why, but maybe that's just me. That's my Achilles heel. I can't be big enough to root for Belgium in the future. But that was a shame. I enjoyed the game, but it was a shame. The U.S. men's national team played very well. I think they distinguished themselves, and certainly Howard, the goalie, was epic. That will be one for the ages. They will talk about Howard of North Brunswick, New Jersey, where I grew up, for years and years. So North Brunswick should be proud, and Howard should be proud. The U.S. men's national team should be proud. Some questions in the forum when we're asking about why don't we talk much about sabermetrics, the pitching sabermetrics or fielding sabermetrics in this course. Well, that's been reserved for 201. Those kind of analyses really dive into PitchFX very quickly. To play with the PitchFX database, I would submit you really need to know SQL and R well. We thought teaching SQL and R using hitting metrics was the way to go. So the plan was, if I'm right, my thesis is sabermetricians need to know SQL and R. They need to use these tools to really become good sabermetricians, to really do analyses right. If you don't know these languages, yes, you can read all the articles and you can learn a lot, but to be a sabermetrician, you've got to actually do the work, do the research. So the goal all along for this course was to set up a model so that learners around the world could get the tools they need to become sabermetricians. And this is the introductory course. And the introductory course needed SQL and needed R. If we didn't teach SQL and R and just said, hey, let's use Excel, you'd get this far. And then you wouldn't get all the way to the place you needed to be to have the tools you need to really do sabermetrics full bore. So that's why we designed the first course to be the introduction to SQL, the introduction to R. That's why we spent so much time on the SQL sandbox, to really get at how to teach SQL best. And so we've really been thoughtful about the SQL and R piece. And how do we do that? Well, we talk about a lot of different hitting metrics. To get to pitching, it's good to be in a 201 class, because the pitching metrics require database knowledge to be able to get at the PitchFX database and answer the questions you might have about PitchFX. So that was the model all along, that 101 would be hitting sabermetrics, because it's pretty well defined, it's pretty well explained, it's a logical progression to say batting average isn't the way to go, we can improve upon that. And so as we go forward from batting average, we can talk through hitting metrics, all the while learning SQL and R better to become better sabermetricians. So that was the plan in the first 6 weeks in 101. Let's hope we're meeting it. That certainly was the idea. 201 was where we were going to do pitching and pitch FX and using R and SQL better to get at the pitch FX database, to really get at questions of pitching. Defense is difficult. We've got lots of sort of metadata, big, summary data from Fangraphs, because that data that they get is from Baseball Info Solutions, where they're really trying to get at players that make plays. There's also inside edge data on defense, and Fangraphs is starting to show that. At least I think it's Fangraphs. It's Fangraphs showing inside edge data, right? I think so. Yeah. The inside edge data is great too. It's another great look at database, independent of Baseball Info Solutions. The inside edge work has other little subtle nuances that are different than the BIS work. But if I'm a baseball club, I want to buy both sets of data, the raw data, and add it to my model of baseball performance, defensive performance. So Sabermetrics 201 will not have the raw data. We have sort of the summarized metadata that you get from Fangraphs, because Fangraphs has been kind enough to summarize these data for us. That's how we get these numbers that get at defensive play and defensive runs saved. You get your defensive play goes to runs. We add it to a player's value, a run value. We add it to batting and defensive base running runs. We get a value, and then we go to WAR. Part of week 6 is to summarize the different WAR frameworks, wins above replacement. So we've been talking about replacement level. We've been talking about how we get from runs to wins. We've talked about how we get runs estimators with hitting. The final pieces of getting to runs so that we can get to wins with WAR frameworks will come in the 201 class when we talk about pitching, we talk about defense. Hope that's clear why we don't do pitching in Sabermetrics 101. It was really by design, because we want learners to get through this course so that they have these in their toolbox. They've got SQL and R in their toolbox, and they can start going. Now, we could have designed the class as a 12 or 15-week class. It was very much decided. It was decided early on to split it into two 6-week courses. So it just creates a better sort of sequential framework for our students. Hopefully that's clear. One more final thing. I want to give a final encouragement to the learners who are going to see this. Plug away. Get through this class. If my thesis is right and you want to become a practicing sabermetrician, you should get through the SQL work in our course and get through the R work in our course. It'll set you up with that right foundation you need to start asking questions as a sabermetrician. And maybe the tools will be there enough for you to go start asking questions. Either way, just being that curious data observer, that beginning data scientist, was another huge thesis about this class. We really wanted to get that done with folks. So there's my little intro to the office hours. I want to make sure we were able to get the link of the new office hours out there to the previous link that was already out there.
Yeah, I placed all that in with the Twitter post you put. I put the right link underneath.
I put out a Twitter post?
Yeah, the one that Rob and I retweeted.
Oh, that must have been done automatically.
Yeah, perhaps.
Nice.
I put the right link on there.
Excellent. So you replied to my lousy Twitter post.
Sure. Let's say that.
Okay. Excellent. So next time I will not start the broadcast to see if it works. I will just start it when it needs to be started. Excellent. Learning all the time here, people. Learning all the time. So, can you just ask a question? See if this question feature works. Are you seeing a question at the bottom?
Yeah, I'm seeing 2 questions already.
Okay, because I don't see any questions yet.
Really?
Yeah.
You on my laptop, so you can.
Let me see if I go over here. What happens? My other computer might be able to do that. I think that's the first one. How do I get to the second one? I sent it to you. Here we go. So, how about... Oh, here's something I'm going to mention. Fantastic article in Sports Illustrated this week about Sig Megdal of the Houston Astros and the whole Houston Astros analytics department. Very much recommended that you read this, and let's put a link there on that somewhere in the discussion forums.
Yes, sure.
About that. Now, if I click this live on my computer, I wonder if it's going to go all haywire. So, get to that Houston Astros article on Sig Megdal and the whole analytics department at the Astros. Very good insight into how these things work. So, interesting. I do not see these questions on my Hangout, but they're over here. Good. I can read them here. Okay, Module 3, Problem Set 2. I've tried to make it work, but my answer still shows some rounding discrepancies.
Should I feel that one, or?
Yes. Does this ring a bell? The rounding discrepancies in Module 3, Problem Set 2, because I don't know what that is.
Yeah, yeah, I'll come to the screen.
There's Morris.
Hi, everyone.
The fabulous Morris Greenberg, everyone.
So, there have been questions about this before. We've changed the rounding for a few of the problem sets thereafter when students said that it wasn't accommodating enough. It should be however many decimals we request. It should be, it should be within that range of 0.001 if it's 3 decimals. If we ask for 2 decimals, it should be 0.01. It should be within that range of rounding. If you think you still have the right answer within that rounding range, please post specifically about that, and we'll look individually to regrade your post. But for the most part, it should still work for most people, but if not, we'll look into your answers. We can see some of your submission answers, and we will try to regrade yours if we do think that they are the correct answers. So I hope that helps.
The fabulous Morris Greenberg. Excellent. So, another plug that for an event in the future. Next week, next Thursday, the 10th, the Red Sox play an afternoon game, and we've decided to do a live tweet event. We're using Twitter, right?
Yeah.
We're doing a live tweet event around the game. It's I think it's the Blue Jays.
Yeah, what's the date? I forget.
July 10th.
10th, right.
It's a 4 o'clock game. So July 10th at 4, we're going to do a Sabermetrics 101 live tweet event, and we're going to have guests, people, friends are going to be with me, and we're just going to talk through a game, sort of in a very Sabermetrics friendly way, talk about different components of the game. And it should be a lot of fun. So highly recommended that you sort of join us and watch the live tweeting of the game next July 10th. Um, since questions are not, I only have two, Morris. Is that it? So,
one of them's for minutes.
right. So, let's riff some more. What do we have left, Morris, before we may get more questions?
Another thing we can talk about from this week specifically is what was the exact wording of this? The exact wording is I think some people still wanted to go over some stuff with regression to the mean, and in general how we can know when something truly is reliable beyond a certain point of data. So.
Yes. Well, regression to the mean will happen anytime something is probabilistic. It's got error associated with it. And if it's not true, if I flip a coin that's true, the probability is 0.5 it's heads, 0.5 it's tails. There's the one thing that we can talk about with flipping a coin is out of a 20 coin flips, how many are heads and how many are tails? That's probabilistic now. But the coin flip itself is a true event. It's 50-50. Albert Pujols' batting average in 2015 is not a true event. It's dependent on many factors. But because we're sabermetricians and we actually care about what Albert Pujols might do next year, how many hits he might get, what kind of hits he'll get, how many plate appearances he will have, it's actually important for sabermetricians to think about projecting Albert Pujols' offensive performance. But you can't do it the same way like you can a true event. So let's say, for example, I give you the option of a coin flip happening 20 times. How many are going to be heads? How many are going to be tails? What's the right answer? On average, the right answer is 10 and 10. But I do 20 coin flips. It's not going to be 10 and 10 every time. Sometimes it's going to be 11-9, 12-8, 13-7, 14-6, maybe even the rare 19-1 or something like that. That's the probability piece. The rare 19-1, the less rare 18-2, all the way up to the 10-10, which is the true average if you do it all the time, if you do it many, many times. So the regression to the mean is all about that. If you take a sample of 20 coin flips and you're at 15 heads and 5 tails, and you want to do it again, you shouldn't guess that that person who made it 15-10, 15 heads and 5 tails is going to do that again. You wouldn't predict that. You would say, no, it's going to be 10 and 10. That's the regression to the truth of 10 to 10. So when you're true and there's no noise in the system, no error in the system, no luck or chance in the system, it's 50-50, you're going to always say it's going back to 50-50. That's the right prediction. You're never going to say that that person who for some reason flipped 20 times and got 15-5, oh, they're magic. They can control this. They're going to go 15-5 again. That's not what you're going to predict at all. You're going to predict them coming back to 10-10. That's the principle of regression to the mean. But we don't come all the way back to 2010, because when we talk about baseball, you're talking about taking a sample 1 year, getting somebody's OPS 1 year. Well, that's OPS for 1 year. You're going to do it the next year. You're going to say, you know what? I bet you they're going to come back to the league average, because that's the right play. Now, that means both extremes are going to come back to the league average. Now, hopefully the data we showed you from 2012 and 2013 convinced you that this is a real phenomenon. That's very repeatable. I could show that 2011 to 2012, 2010 to 2011, 2003 to 2004. You look at the extremes, they're going to fall back to the mean, whether they're extremes on the high end or the low end. That is the principle of regression to the mean. It's going to happen whenever you've got a mix of, you've got an imperfect measure, and it's got luck and error and chance associated with it. Like OPS. You know, there's little dinky hits all the time that happen in baseball, and those count towards your OPS. There are little fluky plays that allow you to score runs that wouldn't be normal. You know, it hits the wall funny and it bounces real far. That makes that runner go an extra base. Well, that's a fluky play that allows for increased offense. It's random, it's lucky, it's by chance. It happens in baseball. So, regression to the mean, when you take measures that happen, serial measures, measure after measure after measure, you're not going to predict that it's going to stay at that measure. You're going to say, no, there's a regression. We've seen it again and again. When there's noise and chance and luck and error, it's going to come back to the mean on average. And so, I don't know. Maybe an exercise for the student would be to go to another year. Don't take OPS, but take maybe ERA leaders. List the ERA leaders. Top 10 ERA leaders 1 year, and see if they're the top 10 the next year. They won't be, because there's error and luck involved in them being the top 10 leaders 1 year. The next year, they're going to fall back towards the mean. That's on both extremes. The worst 10 and the best 10, we're going to come back to the average. So that's regression to the mean. We talk about it as the Sports Illustrated jinx, because you get on the cover of Sports Illustrated by being an outstanding performer. And the outstanding performance is obviously some element of skill and talent, but it's also got luck associated with it. When you become the best of the champion, there's lucky things that happen along the way. With your skill and talent, you're ready to get on the cover of Sports Illustrated as an outstanding athlete. But the next time you perform, you're probably regressing back to where your skill and talent should be. And that's most likely towards the mean. So this is where we think about skill and talent. Now, when there's proper statistical analyses that where you're moving along on a measure and it's going up and down, you know, at a certain point you're going to say, well, this is the skill and talent level. But the problem in baseball is skill and talent levels change too. Aging changes these things. So you've got this variable skill and talent changing. You've got skill and talents changing with time. You're taking serial measures that are impacted by time. Every year you're taking these serial measures again and again. So it's challenging. Now, if you want to explore good work around when do these things settle down, when can you sort of trust a new skill and talent level, Russell Carlton at BP has done a lot of this very interesting work. And he's even, I think a couple of his papers, if you dig down deep enough, he explains his method too.
He does.
So there is where you're going to get at the final piece of where skill and talent should be, where you don't have to worry about regressing to the mean anymore, where you've taken enough sample size to stop worrying about the luck and the noise. It's a signal to noise problem. When's the signal enough so that the noise is damped out, so that you trust the signal as being the true signal. And in baseball, that's the true skill and talent level. Fabulous, extremely readable book is The Signal and the Noise by Nate Silver. I should have brought that one out. That is a great read. It talks all about this kind of statistical sampling. And he goes through baseball projections. That's how Nate started. I mean, he did other things too. I mean, Nate started, I'm pretty sure he started as a poker player, trying to make money with online poker, and translated that into baseball projections with Pacoda and BP. Pacoda and BP has had multiple lives since then, but it started a certain way with a certain set of principles, looking at projections. But regression was absolutely part of Pacoda. You had to regress, you had a regression term to get back to the league mean and what that would be. All projection systems do. Even Marcel the monkey does it. So, but then, of course, a big part of Signal to Noise by Nate Silver is his election polling, his aggregation of election polls. And it's not, Nate Silver has done great work, and we should all thank Nate Silver and bow down to his fabulous work. But there are other polling aggregators out there that they really understand how to, if there's enough data that they can gather from various polls, they can do a pretty good job, even though the needle might be moving with news and other events. They can do a very good job predicting elections. So Module 6, the last module for this course, 101, we'll also talk about sample size. But now we won't go into it this deep. We're going to give you the introduction to sample size and why it matters to analytics. So there's my rant on regression to the mean. Hopefully it wasn't just a repeat of what was in the videos for the course a while back, and hopefully it was useful for folks. So here we go. Hey, Andy and Morris, how well prepared will we, you, the students, be to make hitting models or find patterns in baseball statistics using SQL and R after completing Sabermetrics 101? And before Saber 102, what's the best way to learn more about applying what we've learned? I think there's two questions. Best way to apply what you learn is a mantra I say over and over again, and I think it's just true. I don't know how else to say it again or say it differently. You've got to start observing and letting those observations drive your questions. And I know I've said it many times before. I'll keep saying it, but that's the answer. That's the answer for you as a student, and a learner in this area who wants to be a sabermetrician. Start looking at data. Now that means you should be well read in the area. You should be reading the websites. You should be reading the old work by folks. I've given you hints in these office hours that we probably should translate more, so put on the list of things to do. We should probably at some point write up my recommendations, book recommendations that would help folks.
And I'm posting all the article recommendations you're doing here.
Wonderful, wonderful. Morris, thank you. Morris saving the office hours. Thank you. But so what you should do if you really want to be a sabermetrician is do it. Get in there and start looking at the data. Now, we haven't gone into pitching yet. That was strategic. It was a strategic decision on how to teach this course best. You may disagree with it. It was our decision. But we've given you the layman database in the SQL Sandbox. We've given you the RetroSheet game database in the SQL Sandbox. You can start using SQL to extract what you need. And we've done enough R for you to do some damage in R. If you really want to push this, you can start doing more R code, loading those CSV files, and start manipulating the data. We've given you enough tools, believe it or not, to start doing real code in R yourself. You have to have that confidence to just try it and go for it. That was the idea in the introduction, is to show you that you can get data into a data frame. You can start shrinking the data frame into pieces you want. You can start manipulating the data frame arithmetically. Start modifying the data that's there based on whatever you think is a model of performance. And that's there in R, but you got to be willing to try it. Now, RStudio is brilliant for this. R as a language is brilliant for this because it's an interpreter. You just do it, and you look at it. You see if it worked. You put other code in there to see if the R code you've written is right. That's called Programming 101. So we've given you enough here to start doing it on your own. Now, to do it right, to really like hammer it, like Morris Greenberg has. Morris Greenberg's a monster sabermetrician. He wants to be one, but he's right. He's on his track. He's tracking right there because he's looking at data. Now, what Morris is surrounded by are other friends who love this same stuff, so they can ask questions of each other. They can help each other with data and thinking about data. So a small community is built up around Morris and his friends to do sabermetrics. There are other virtual communities where this can happen. That's part of the discussion forums for this course. But the way you're going to get feedback on your work is to do something and put it out there. Write up a little study that you thought of. You made an observation, you thought of something, or you read something in the 1983 abstract and you thought, ooh, maybe we could do that this way or this way now. Do it. Use SQL to grab that kind of data we have. We don't have events yet. That's 201. We don't have PitchFX yet. That's 201. But we've got enough that you can ask some cool questions about sabermetrics. And we've given you little looks into these data so that you can start doing this. Now, unfortunately, not everyone can hang out with Morris Greenberg and get their ideas, bounce ideas off Morris. But you could put it in a blog, you could start tweeting it, your own work, and that's useful. If you heard Louis Paulus, you heard Mike DiBartolo, you've seen the stories of other beginning sabermetricians, guess what? They started doing it. So you just got to start. So that's one part of your question. Hitting models. Well, hitting models. I mean, we've given you models of hitting. OPS is a formula. It's a model for hitting. Is it a great model? It's pretty dang good. Is it perfect? No. It's got flaws. OPS is not great. We can stand here and criticize OPS for what it measures and why it's not a great model for hitting. How do you build a model for hitting? Well, read more about David Smith's thinking for base runs. It's great logic. We gave you the Tango articles on runs to wins. No, I'm sorry, runs estimators. Read those once, and if you don't get it right away, read it twice, read it 3 times. Keep reading Tango's article, because Tango does a great logical progression of this idea of how to make runs. That model is the basis for what all the clubs are doing. Trust me, now they've got more info. They're adding a lot to their models. I can't tell you what their models are because they don't tell anyone what their models are. Those are sophisticated sabermetricians and analysts looking at very sophisticated models to get at baseball performance, how baseball works. But start. And know this, OPS is a model for hitting. Runs created is a model for hitting. Base runs is a model for hitting. So start reading some more about these intro models that we've just talked about. Batting average is a model for hitting. So consider those models and think about how you would do yours and how you would sort of indicate what's good or bad about it. Your own model. And maybe start adding something to it. Or just learning more, just trying something. It seems that in the 1980s, everybody's sort of getting into sabermetrics, following Palmer and James and Kramer, had to develop their own metric. Everyone, it was like metric of the year, metric of the week. So people made their own models. That was a time of lots of metrics. And if you want to reference, we should put this reference out there. Did I ever reference the John Jarvis paper on all those dang hitting metrics? It's a great paper. The John Jarvis paper. I should have put those in the lessons, but probably I felt it was too much maybe. The Jarvis paper goes through all these different models of hitting and tries to analyze which is best. It's some title. If you look at J.A.H.R. Jarvis.
Jarvis, is it John F. Jarvis? J.F. Jarvis?
Yes.
Yeah, I think I found it.
Is it something like a look at run estimators or some weird title like that?
Statistical Studies Baseball?
That's a link to a page of his, I bet.
Okay.
And then there's a paper in there about a look at run estimators.
Okay. I think
You
yeah, I'll find it.
Okay. But that paper goes through all the metrics of the week. The models of batting performance. So keep plugging away. This is a real area for introductory citizen scientists, is sort of a term that I like to use, because anyone can start this. You can start playing with the data. We've given you the sandbox. So now start playing with the data. Okay. Thank you, Max. Good question. I live in a city that doesn't have an MLB team, but has a minor league team. Minor league data sets are harder to find. SABR has one, SABR.org. And I don't know if it's members only, but there's some minor league database associated with them. People have been building minor league databases recently because there's different software out there that scrapes the data from Major League. MLBAM has the 30 teams in the major leagues, but it's got all the minor league teams also. There are ways to start building out college databases too. Much trickier, harder to do, figure out the reliability of the data. But since whenever BAM started, the putting data out there. And I want to say 2002, 3, 4-ish. And there's tools like, what's the tool? It's called the, I'm going to remember in a second. But there's different tools out there that scrape these files from MLBAM and trick out databases. It's called the tool, what's the baseball tool book? It's called,
I don't know what you're referring to.
Damn it. BIB. I'll remember. Yeah, we'll have to post that as an addendum to this chat. But I can't believe I'm spacing on that. Anyway. Edward, I hear there are 14,000 plus students signed up. How many active students have survived to this point? There's different levels of survival, right? I mean, some students have gotten through the first week, or the second week, or the third week, or the fourth week, or fifth week. Right now, there is 18,250 people taking the class. And at least 5%, 900, 1,000, are chomping at the bit, finishing. As soon as we release the material, it's like they're done in hours. There's a cohort that's waiting for the release of every new module, and they just run right through it. And the way the course is going to be laid out, we're going to release Module 6 on the 10th. Then you've got to the 18th to finish Module 6. And then the final exam and a few other things a couple days after that. So you've got time after, you've got to say July 22nd or 21st, 22nd. It's all there on the edX platform to finish all the material. And I encourage you to do it. Please finish this course. It's probably beneficial to you. If you like this material and you like data, you're sort of at the front end of your academic career maybe, and you're thinking, "Ooh, do I want to be a data scientist?" Well, finish the course. Learn some R, learn some SQL. If you're an adult learner, maybe you want to learn some R, excuse me, or SQL. Well, we've created this course for you as well. So keep plugging away. Nothing would make me happier than 18,250 students who've signed up all finish. I think that's a stretch, but I hope you all finish. All right. Okay, so Steve asks a question. I love baseball, but I'm interested in how to use data in other sports. It seems like other sports, for example, hockey, they're difficult to observe data and get the statistics. There's no simple databases that are as extensive as baseball databases are. Baseball has sort of a leg up on a lot of others. But there are tons of soccer analytics. And the question is, how much is publicly available and how much isn't? So in basketball, there's tons of basketball analytics too. Again, how much is publicly available? If you Google this enough, you'll find out where some data are, and then maybe with the right kind of questions, right kind of approach, you might get your hands on some of these data somehow. I don't know how to. I don't know the secret, the key to get you these data, but it's out there, and being, more and more familiar with the data, more and more familiar with the research will only help you understand the kind of data that's being collected, maybe understand how to ask questions about those data, maybe get involved with people who have access to these data somehow. I mean, I don't know, but my recommendation is to keep plugging away at these places that collect these kinds of data. There are clearly, I mean, Sean Foreman's site has some level of this for all the different sports. That's Sports Reference. That's Sean's site. He has that's baseball reference, hockey reference, Olympics reference, basketball reference, football reference. It's all there under Sports Reference umbrella that Sean runs. So he's got access to some of these data, and I don't know if it's the cutting edge. I'm sure it's not, but he's got some of it. I would highly recommend you go to his site, learn how to get these data that are publicly available, and start thinking about them. What does it mean? What does it show? What can you learn from it? Google more about this. And if you're interested, keep diving in as best you can. That's unfortunately, I wish I could give you the answer. Oh, it's this website. It's not that simple, but you have to be persistent, and you have to be resourceful and persistent, and keep plugging away at trying to get those data. Oh, question about the data leak. Oh, that's too bad. Great thing just happened yesterday, right? Yeah. Was it yesterday it was released by Deadspin and the other website before that? The Astros have developed this wonderful system so that people involved in the front office can comment on potential trades. And unfortunately, this was just leaked yesterday. So a lot of discussions that went on between the Astros and other teams about potential trades are now public. The more famous ones that were mentioned right away were discussions with the Marlins for Giancarlo Stanton, and discussions with the Red Sox for Xander Bogaerts. So, unfortunately, they were out there. I don't think it's, in my opinion, it's actually not surprising at all. I mean, all the stuff I read was standard operating procedure as far as I understood it. People explore options, and people reject options. Some people who play fantasy baseball probably are familiar with this. You suggest a trade. It gets rejected. They just have it all recorded in the Astros system, and then that got leaked. But nothing in there was too shocking to me. It all seemed par for the course from what I've heard from people who work in these offices. Stuff like this happens all the time. By this, I mean, the stuff I mean that happens all the time are negotiations. They get rejected. There are all kinds of stuff floated around that never, ever happen. And I think that's sort of the summary view of what we saw with the Astros leak. So it's unfortunate for the Astros that this happened, but not surprising. I mean, nothing I read was like, oh my God, that's news. It's news because it happened. If front offices weren't exploring trades and asking, for different things, creating scenarios that worked or didn't work, that would be surprising. That no one's trading, no one's putting out trade offers. These are 30 clubs that are very competitive with one another. They all want to win. They all want to, do well amongst the other 29 clubs and be well thought of. So they're all going to work hard at this. So the leak was unfortunate. My summary is the leak was unfortunate, but everything I read about it didn't shock me at all. I would have predicted all those things would have been going on in all kinds of front offices. Okay, question from. I'm not sure I get the question. There's a question from Edward. There's an ellipses here.
I think you answered the second part of this question before.
Oh, okay.
He asked about how many students of the, I think he said 14,000 are participating week to week. So I think that's just he wrote a really long question that was loaded.
Oh, okay, got it. Got it. So I already read the second part.
Yeah.
Well, Edward, I'm glad you're taking the MOOC. I hope you learned something. That's what I hope for all our learners. And maybe you're a stats guy and you'll teach a stats class. That'd be great. Oh, Jeff, Twitter account. I probably tweet more than I join the discussion forums, which may not be the best strategy. My Twitter handle is at SABR101, and that's where we'll be tweeting from. We'll probably put the hashtag for the course on there for all tweets, which is the hashtag on Twitter we're using for the course is hashtag SABR101x. SABR101x. X is for the edX platform, and SABR101 just for the course. So it's probably going to all be hashtag SABR101x. It's probably going to a lot of it, probably all of it, maybe most of it, originating from the account at Sabermetrics101, which is my account. Someone's asking about regression to the mean and more advanced R code for it. R code is out there. If you want to do more regression to the mean work, you really need to take a stats course. You really, I mean, this course is an introduction to it. To do it formulaically, you're really going to you have to regress the right amount. And you regress the right amount based on the spread of the data around the best fit line. Okay, so let me try to explain this better. You look at a regression of two variables against each other, and you see a spread of data, and you see a relationship. You do a scatter plot. You get a sense of, oh, are they correlated, or how well do these two variables go together? You can get a best fit line, do a nice linear line, linear best fit. That's a linear regression, and you can get things like R squared, the correlation coefficients that look at how well fit the data is to that linear estimator. That line now becomes a model for how these two variables go together. Well, how spread out the data is, or how tightly fit the data is, will determine how much you're going to regress in that serial measure year to year. If you're going to do something serial measures, you have to do regression to the mean because it happens. How much do you regress? What's your regression parameter? It depends on how spread out the data is or how tight the data is. The tighter the data is, the more it's a true phenomenon. The more it's like a coin flip. Okay? And the more you're going to have to regress to something true. That's a broad view of regression to the mean and how you do it formulaically. So the linear LM model, the one that does the regression, will give you the best fit line and the R squared and all the parameters of how well the data fit that best fit line. And that's going to determine how much you regress in your projections or your predictions. If you really want to learn more about this, you're going to obviously Google regression to the mean. How much do I regress? Put in words like how much do I regress? What's my formula for regression? You'll have to teach yourself. And I don't know of any real good source for this besides all those stats courses I took. So it's probably in some like Stats 201 kind of course books. Do you know anything, Morris?
Well, I just want to say it's not necessarily. I'm not sure from this question if it's entirely clear the difference between regression and regression to the mean. Also, just to make.
Oh, am I confusing it more? Hopefully not.
I'm not sure.
I don't want to confuse.
I just want to make sure that the student knows that there is a difference between the two.
Well, they're related in that when I do regression to the mean, if I want to do projections, if I'm doing forecasting, I've got to regress my forecast because I know it's true, right? So I'm doing forecasting, so I'm going to project Albert Pujols in 2015. I've got to do a regression on whatever I'm looking at. I've got to regress it based on the trueness of the regression itself, the R-squared value, the correlation coefficient. How tight that data is to the linear regression is going to determine how much I regress when I do my forecasting. So maybe it's Googling forecasting stuff, I think.
Yeah, I think that sounds reasonable. I just wanted to make sure.
Okay, so sorry for the confusion, but you got to be persistent in your understanding of forecasting and how much to regress, and it relates to how spread the data is. It relates to the R-squared value, the R value. Okay. Somebody asking about a stringer. How do I get the job? Nice. How did I get that job, Morris?
I don't know. I don't know.
Because I'm freaking awesome?
Sure.
No. I don't know. I applied for it 5 years ago, and they gave me the job. Every year, and I forget when it is, it's probably October-ish. If you're reading websites, every year in October, Corey Schwartz will blast, "Hey, I need stringers for," and there's turnover in this job. There's 85 of us in the country who do it, and every year some people leave. And we just hired a guy for Fenway this past winter. So every year there's a turnover of some of the people who do this job. Corey, every October, November-ish, blasts, "Hey, we need stringers here, 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 and here," and because there's openings. How I got it, I think, the people in charge, I don't know. I guess I got lucky. Something like that. A lot of people applied, and I must have done well enough to have them offer the job to me. It's a very challenging job, by the way. The stringer job, I probably shouldn't say, got to worry what I say here. But it's a challenging job. The biggest part is your ability to really concentrate and pay attention and ignore peripheral stimuli and really focus on what you're doing. As soon as you get distracted, you start failing at the job. So that's the biggest piece about that job. It's a great job. That's wonderful being part of the record keeping of the game. I enjoy that kind of nerdy, weird, I help established the record of what happened. I worked last night at Fenway, and I was very excited because there was almost a no-hitter, you know. So as I'm doing all of this, I'm thinking, wow, my first no-hitter as a Springer. I thought that would have been kind of cool. So it's a challenging job. Try and, if you read a lot of baseball websites, you probably will run into this list of new openings after the sort of the season's over, October, November, and pay attention to when it comes out, and do your best in the application. There's a couple hurdles you have to pass through as you go forward. Great job. All right. Somebody's mentioning the course. Wonderful. Somebody's talking about rounding errors again. You see that?
Yeah, actually, to answer that, I added a post to the discussion forum. Literally just post a question number, and we'll try to get to everyone's rounding problems within 3 days. And we'll hope that works.
Okay, so rounding is being addressed by the teaching staff. Morris Greenberg will solve your problems because Morris Greenberg is the best course coordinator ever.
Just go to the rounding questions post in the discussion forum.
So, Christopher, look at the rounding questions in the discussion forum. That should help. Okay. Anything else? I'm sort of at the end here. I think have I missed anything?
Yeah, there are some questions that just...
Oh, SABR101. We'll see. The process for Sabermetrics 201. We're going to wrap up 101. I'm going to meet with the staff, the team that's worked on this. They've been very helpful in getting this put together for all of you learners, and talk to the administration at Boston University who have supported this effort to debrief about what went right, what went wrong, how to improve it, if we run 101 again. And then as part of that discussion of how to improve 101 and debrief on how well it went and what we could do better and what we would keep, it will impact our planning for 201. So there is no definitive plans for 201 until we debrief and think about 101 and how it went. If I were going to predict, I would say there's probably a very high probability 201 will happen, but there's no guarantee. It's not in the works. It's not like it's been green-lighted yet. But 101 students will certainly hear about it when it gets announced. So keep paying attention. And I would say it's a pretty... I don't know how this is going to work officially, but if you're not very comfortable with the material covered in 101, you will not be happy with the pace of 201. It really is important that you nail 101, do it very well, understand the material, plug away at this stuff that may be difficult. Not just do the minimum required to get the certificate, although that's useful. Explore this. Get familiar with SQL and R and playing with data, because that's what 201 is going to be about. It's going to be about PitchFX data, events data, this very rich database of events that is in RetroSheet. We'll start, that's really what we have to explore in 201. These larger databases that really get at more subtle questions about sabermetrics, baseball analytics. So it is a 201 thing. It really is advanced based on the student's understanding of SQL are, being familiar enough to say, okay, I'm going to throw you some R code and not give a whole lot of explanation about RStudio, how it works. I'm going to assume those things are very familiar with my 201 students. Okay.
And there's one more question right underneath. For any given observation, what tools do sabermetricians use to assess how much is due to luck, chance, etc., and how much?
Right. So this is the question by Joe. Great question, Joe. It goes back to, I had a little mini rant on regression to the mean and your skills and luck, chance. When you're doing regression to the mean, when you're doing forecasting, you've got to have a regression term to say, oh, it looks like everyone's coming back to the mean this much, or this much, or that, just a little. So how much you regress depends on the correlation of your linear model that you do when you do the first bivariate analysis to get your line of best fit. When you say, I want to predict Albert Pujols' batting average next year, you're going to say, how do I get it? This idea of how many hits he's going to get, how many at-bats he's going to get, how they interact. And then you want to get sort of on average, whether how much is his skill and luck. Because remember, he's got a certain skill that's going to determine a measure of batting average. And then there's going to be noise around that. Batting average skill. So to determine the noise very much relates, and then to determine how much you regress is based on how much noise there is around your measure. And that comes from the linear model that you do, regressing batting average year to year. And so that's forecasting. And I wonder if this is worthwhile. I mean, I guess that's a 201 topic. It certainly wasn't designed in 101 to really go through how much to regress something when you're doing these kind of things like forecasting. But that's the kind of work, that's the kind of stuff you try to Google or find in certain textbooks, statistics textbooks, how much to regress and why. Hopefully that helps, Joe. Now, but I think that's what you're asking. For any given observation, what tools do sabermetricians use to assess how much is due to luck, chance, how much is actual difference, skill, strategy? Yes, it's regression to the mean. It's noise around the measure that you're looking at. So the tools is measuring noise around the signal of whatever it is you're measuring. The skill is the signal. The luck error is the noise, and you want to reduce the noise by sample size. Well, so increasing sample, and in forecasting, regressing your projections are the tools used by sabermetricians and statisticians. This is not a sabermetrics thing. It's a sort of a statistics. What you'd learn is in a statistics class kind of thing. So my advice. Here's some advice. I think I mentioned before in office hours, I've had about 6 or 7 statistics courses in my life. That seems like a lot to a lot of people. They're like, oh, you've had so much statistics. You must really know this stuff. Well, I know enough to get in trouble. And so I do my own statistics when I can. I like to think I can look at a data set and think about how do I manipulate it to do a right statistical model if I need to. But if it ever matters, like it matters for publication, it matters for a talk I'm giving, I'm going to talk about statistics and statistics testing and modeling, I go to a pro. I go to somebody who is a professional statistician and ask them, am I doing this right? And I get it right maybe over 50%. Maybe. So, bottom line for that little vignette is to say everybody who likes data, who's a little bit nerdy about this stuff, everybody should take statistics. And then you should take it again and again. And then to think you know it, convince yourself you don't, and take it again. There's no limit to how much statistics training you can have as an analyst, as a scientist, as somebody who's a careful observer. So highly recommend taking lots of statistics courses forever. Just keep doing it. Someone asked about MOOCs. The MOOCs I take are stats MOOCs. I keep learning more and more statistics. How are we doing, Morris?
I think we're basically. I think you've answered basically all the questions. It's been a good amount of time, a bit over an hour. So.
Over an hour is perfect.
So I think.
All right, so thank you again for these office hours. Somebody asked about the next office hours. It's on the schedule. It's the week after the release of it's the Monday of the final week. So it's like the 13th, 14th. We should make that little announcement somewhere, but we have it on the schedule.
Yes, it's on the schedule, and I will
repost it. But it's the Monday. It's the Monday of the last week after the 6th module has been released. So that'll be the last office hours, and of course the discussion forum is obviously the place where you will get your answers, get your questions answered by fabulous course community TAs and the fabulous Morris Greenberg. Everyone, the fabulous. Okay, thank you everyone, and thank you for your questions. That was good office hours, and we will see you down the road. Keep watching baseball.